Hello, everyone. Welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast for our musicals series, 5 decades of musicals. We're into the 60s. It's about
Yes.
time we finally got into a Disney movie, I think, Janine. It only makes sense for Disney to have shown up on this series at some point. And what better movie to take us into the 60s, some might call the prime time of Hollywood musicals in
Yes.
terms of scale and scope and real big spectacle. Maybe you see those musicals on Broadway start to really elevate into the 60s as well, and we get all those, kind of very, very famous Broadway musicals starting here, moving into the movies themselves. But we've got a very special movie to talk about today. I think a childhood favourite for near enough everyone.
Yeah.
I think, and honestly, one of the most beloved movies I think in Disney's entire catalogue, which is saying something given Disney's catalogue, really.
Yeah.
Um, a movie full of whimsy, full of utter charm, full of ridiculously catchy songs. And is it, much like its title character, practically perfect in every way, Janine?
I mean, I'd say so with a few caveats, albeit Dick Van Dyke's glorious accent. Um
But I think just to interject slightly,
okay.
Dick Van Dyke's accent in this movie, I think, is the best worst accent ever put in a
Okay.
movie.
I think that's a fair statement to make. Considering how charismatic and fun he is, you kind of don't really care all that much. It's not like watching Bram Stoker's Dracula and hearing Keanu Reeves
No.
awful accent and it distracts. He is an incredibly fun animated actor to watch. So him doing this kind of over the top Cockney accent doesn't pull you out of things. It's adds kind of to the fun of things almost. You know it's not accurate, you know it's not good, but you kind of don't care.
I think it's because the energy's there. The
Yes. The
the the you
commitment
know
to
the
it is there.
the commitment to it is totally there. It's consistent. I think it as an accent, it's actually very consistent. And why we've begun today's episode on Mary Poppins talking about Dick Van Dyke's accent, I will never know. But it is consistent in that it is always the same type of wrong in accuracy.
Yes.
But because the energy of his performance, because what he's doing totally matches everything else that's going on in the movie, it just doesn't affect any enjoyment whatsoever that you
Yeah.
have from watching this. And I think similar to last week, obviously we talked Gentlemen Prefer Blondes last week, a pop, musical that kind
Yeah.
of is, bit of pop fun. This is very much the same with a really simple, heartwarming message of embracing the fun in life and, realizing that childlike wonder, childlike imagination, which is obviously something that Disney excels at putting forward and has done since the very beginning. Childlike imagination should not ever go away out of your life. And we see that character exemplified with, Mr. Banks in Mary
Yeah,
Poppins,
it's also
who
this
has to be taught
father's
that again.
yes, and it's also kind of this father story. I think if you watch Saving Mr. Banks, you see that he's kind of the most important character, particularly in the
Yeah.
author's eyes, um, in trying to uh, capture this essence of her father through this character. So, um, on rewatch, you kind of realize that it's all about Mr. Banks, really, and him needing to learn that lesson over anybody else. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
there's no character arc for Mary. There's no character arc for Bert,
yeah,
Dick Van Dyke. There's no real character arc for the children. They
yeah,
are as, silly in the beginning, as they are in the end. It's just
yeah,
how they are perceived in the beginning is so different to how they are perceived
yes.
by, particularly obviously their father
How they're
in the
noticed
end.
as well by him, yeah, by the end. So, yeah, it's a fun kind of rediscovery to notice that the film is actually about him. And
Yeah.
that he's kind of the most distinctly different character from anyone else in the movie. I think, you talked about, we're in the 60s now, and particularly with Disney, I think this was a very kind of touch and go era for Disney. They had a lot of
Mm,
hits and misses. So the fact that this film ended up being as huge as it was and successful as it was is just a testament to the storytelling and the kind of mixed media and the performances and the music and all of those things. So
yeah. I
definitely
mean, the
a great movie.
the mixed media, like you say, putting animation and live
Mhm.
action in there. I want to say it's the first time Disney do that. I mean, God, if I don't know that fact off the top of my head, I'm worried about what is, but I'm certain Mary Poppins is the first time they put live action and animation together, certainly to the scale they do in
They
this
do in
movie.
this. I mean, when was Pete's Dragon?
Pete's Dragon, I think, was in the 70s.
70s? Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
how much
Bedknobs and
after was Bed
Broomsticks
Knobs? Yeah.
obviously was,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bedknobs
A
and
little bit
Broomsticks
after
was
this.
71.
Yeah.
So, this is 64. So I'm
Yeah.
certain it is, and it's so impressive to watch
Oh, yeah.
even
It
now.
still looks great.
It
Mhm.
does, it just works. Like you say, it's a very successful movie. I mean, it won 5 Oscars, Mary Poppins, including obviously Julie Andrews herself
Yeah.
for playing the title character in contentious circumstances, or should we say famous
Yes.
Oscar
Yes, and
circumstances.
so very funny moment in her speech as well. Yeah, I did kind of talk about this when you mentioned in last week's episode the whole kind of switch up from stage to screen with Marilyn's casting in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. A kind of similar twist on that situation happened here as well, as Julie Andrews played the stage version in um oh, why am I
In
blanking?
My Fair
My Fair
Lady, in My
Lady,
Fair
My
Lady.
Fair Lady, and, they chose to cast Audrey Hepburn in the film version and not Julie Andrews, so that freed her up to do Mary Poppins, and she
Yeah,
ended up going up against Audrey Hepburn, that year for Best Actress, and Julie Andrews ended up winning,
yeah,
so you can only imagine how things would have been different if she had been able to play, that character in My Fair Lady instead, and how
yeah.
that would have gone.
I mean, imagine doing all 3. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't possibly, and I mean all 3 as in Eliza Doolittle, Mary Poppins, and then Maria von
Reba
Trapp
Van
the
Trapp,
next year.
yeah. Yeah.
To do 2 back to back
Yeah.
is as impressive as you can possibly get in musicals from
Yeah.
Julie Andrews. In obviously this and The Sound of Music that we have covered in the
Yes.
past
Mhm.
on this show. Sound of Music, a wonderful, wonderful movie. I think The Sound of Music, to be honest, it has far more depth to it than something like Mary Poppins. I think it at times is a much more serious movie. In terms of the Julie Andrews mid-60s musicals, but Mary
Yeah.
Poppins is endlessly watchable. It is so unbelievably happy as a
Yeah.
movie. Everything about it is just pure joy and whimsy. You can't possibly be cynical about any aspect of Mary
Yeah.
Poppins whatsoever when you are actually sat watching the movie. You don't want it to end. You want everything to just carry on. You want to see more journeys into the drawings on the pavement. You
Yeah.
want to see more dancing around the rooftops. You want to fly kites with the Bankses yourself.
Yes, and I also kind of forgot how funny this movie was, particularly I found myself really chuckling out loud, in the scene when the chimney sweeps are, like, running around the house. Like
Or the step in time musical
yes,
number, and they're just
but
causing chaos.
yes, but when they return to the Banks's house and, like, every random thing that somebody says, they just throw it into the step in time song. So when
Yeah.
Ellen, the housekeeper, is like, "Ah!" they're like, "Ah, step in time, ah, step in time."
Yes, it's very funny.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
very
funny.
good.
When, Michael also when all the chimney sweeps are leaving and then little Michael, he's just like pretends to be a chimney sweep and shakes his dad's hand and tries to leave too. It's like it's so funny. So I found myself really laughing more than I remembered because it had been a while since I'd seen it. So I almost forgot how actually funny it was as well.
Yeah, it's been an awful long time since I've seen Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
I wonder why it has been so long.
Yeah.
Possibly because the David Tomlinson movie I watched as a child all the time was Bedknobs and
Bedknobs and
Broomsticks. It
broomsticks. Yeah.
wasn't Mary Poppins, but he's equally as wonderful, obviously, in this movie as we say,
Mhm.
perhaps the most important character in the whole movie,
Yeah.
with his glorious mustache. And
Yes.
needless to say, he's already in the Mustache Hall of Fame for Bedknobs and
Bedknobs and
Broomsticks, so he
broomsticks.
doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't have to be put back in as a two-time inductee. We don't do two-time inductees in the Mustache
Darn.
Hall of
Mhm.
Fame. But his reaction comedy is so great in this movie to every bit of nonsense that is going on.
Yes, his dry, oblivious nature to things going on when we have that like, eccentric sea captain who's always just letting off bombs and shaking the whole house. And
Yeah,
like the mother and the housekeepers have to get into position so like the vases and don't break and the piano is rolling around and he's just there fixing fixing his tie and putting on his hat in like the swinging mirror as the explosion goes off and still just going off on his diatribe about a perfect household and this and that um,
I mean, it's
unfazed at all. It's so good.
what what do you feel about? Obviously, I think we have to spend an awful lot of time today talking about the songs in
Yes.
Mary Poppins because there's so many and they're so known.
Yes.
Near enough all of them, aren't they? They're so incredibly well known. But Mr. Banks is, an English house needs rules and all this business song.
Yes. Well, see, you know how much I hated Rex Harrison's talk singing in My Fair Lady, like, not a
Yes.
fan. Um, but here it actually works because he's able to kind of weave into talking it and singing it, and it also speaks to the kind of stern structure of the character. So it plays into the performance of who this character is and informs his personality as this strict man. And then he kind of weaves into actually singing. So because there's a balance there and it plays into the personality of the character, I think it works really well.
Yeah. It's very similar to, his singing in Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Mhm.
I just think it works. It appears quite early on in the movie as like the life I lead. It's him obviously
Yeah,
singing, explaining all about how
how he wants
discipline
his
is
house.
key
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
routine and
Yeah.
British a British house is like I don't know the lyrics for some reason, but it's annoying me. Um it's very good though, and then it comes
Yeah.
back later on when he takes the children to the bank in a
Yes.
slightly different way, and he's going on about a British bank needs everything to run smoothly, and oh look at this
Yes.
money, and
Yeah.
it comes right after feed the birds tuppence a bag,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Um, but I mean, we do open the movie with Bert speaking to us. We get a little hum of chim chimmery as we get quite frequently throughout
Yeah.
the movie. Him humming this, and he speaks to us. He thinks the wind is changing, something's going on.
Yeah, we get a bit of a
Who's
fourth
turning
wall
up?
break. He turns into the camera and kind of addresses us, "Oh, like, you're here too," and kind of brings us
Yeah,
into the story in that way, which is really charming.
it is, and obviously, then the silhouette of Mary Poppins does turn up. You get the flying down of the umbrella.
Oh, yeah, very
Um,
iconic shots. That's why I loved that really goofy scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when he just looks up at him, he's like, "You look like Mary Poppins. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." 'Cause it's just an iconic way to stand and pose and yeah.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with looking like Mary Poppins, I
Yeah,
don't think, at all. As we say, Mary Poppins practically perfect in
in
every way.
every
You
way, yeah.
could you could call her a boring character. Would that be fair? No, I don't think it would, because she is just an example of pure good, pure kind of joy, and
Yeah.
yes, discipline. Yes,
Yes,
this
I love that she
stern
has this
nature.
stern quality, but she's also very composed and kind and thoughtful, always saying please and thank you and, very well-mannered.
Everything about Mary Poppins' sternness comes with the ability to embrace a certain silliness.
Yes.
And I think that's obviously so important for the children, because you would think at the beginning of this movie, the way the housekeeper, the way Elsa Lanchester talks
Lanchester,
about the
yeah.
children at the beginning of the movie as the nanny that's leaving after a short while because she just can't take
Can't
it
handle these
anymore.
crazy children, which it was just funny to me because I had seen, obviously, Mary Poppins before really getting into any old Hollywood film, so then when I learned that this grouchy old nanny is the bride of Frankenstein, like, what? When I put that together, it was pretty funny, but, yeah.
Well, not just the Bride of Frankenstein, of course, but we
Yes,
we
many
have a
more
soft
things,
spot
of course,
for
but,
Elsa.
yes, but of course, a very iconic role for her, for sure, in her filmography, but,
Yeah,
yes, to kind of piece
not
that
a big
together.
role,
No, no.
but it is hilarious because you think these children must be absolutely chaotic,
Terrible. Yeah,
and they're just really not.
yeah.
Never, ever in this movie are they anything close to bad.
They
They're just
literally
a
just
bit
need some
fun.
attention. Yes, and they just want attention. They just want somebody to, like, play with them and entertain them and, stimulate their minds, really. I
Yeah.
also love just about Mary Poppins the fact that she's very serious about the silliness. Like, she doesn't
Oh, yeah.
address it like it's anything weird. When they're, like, in bed and they can't sleep because they're on this high of jumping into paintings and going on a race, and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being very silly." Like, she just plays it off like it's
Bedtime
nothing.
now.
Yes, or even when they go jump into the painting, like, Bert is trying to get them to jump in and, like, it's not working, and she's just like, "Oh, you're just making it very complicated. This is how you do it." Just, like, very much like these ridiculous, silly things, and she's addressing it either in a way like she doesn't find it strange at all, or it never happened, and I love that that kind of comes back later when, Mr. Banks is questioning her on something, and she says, "I never explain anything." So,
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense.
It doesn't, the Mary Poppins doesn't allow you to figure out if every bit of strange fantasy that's going on in the movie is complete fantasy and concocted in some sort of dream world, or if it is actual reality,
Yes,
and
and
I
we
love
don't
it
need
for
to
doing
know.
that.
Yeah, and we don't need to know. We don't need to know if she's some type of witch or a magical being, like, we don't care. We're just like, "Okay, she's this person who comes in and does what she needs to do and then goes," and she just leaves a bit of whimsy and creativity and beauty and fun, in her wake. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't need an explanation. So I love that they actually have that be part of her kind of set of rules. Like, I never explain anything.
It is. It's great, and obviously that the outing into the drawing on the pavement is comes quite early on. I think it's the first real big sequence of the movie that's a
Yeah.
bit different. You get a couple of songs, sure. Before that, you get your introduction into everybody. Before that, Glynis Johns has the Sister Suffragette song,
Yes,
and
which felt very topical in this day and age of her kind of talking about men being stupid and and uh
the men are stupid in this
yes,
movie.
yes, and just her kind of singing this song about women empowerment and these kinds of things, and that very much still feeling like a prevalent thing that women are fighting for today. So I was just like, this song's like fits so well right now. Like
Yeah,
it
and look,
works. It's working for me.
here is a movie set in Edwardian London,
Yeah.
so it's still, still
Yes, and
relevant.
she's great as well. Like, I love that the 2, housekeepers just kind of go along with her nonsense. Like, she's like, the nanny who's trying to leave, Elsa Lanchester, is trying to talk to her, and she's just singing her song, putting sashes on everybody, and the housekeepers are just singing along, marching with her, harmonizing with her. Like, Ellen in particular, she, like, always seems appalled and shocked for maybe 2, 3 seconds until she's, like, in on the joke and then in on the fun of it. When they
Every
go
time.
Yes, when they go whizzing down the stair railing, she, like, jumps back like she's afraid, and then she looks on with a huge smile, like she's enjoying it. When the, chimney sweeps are running around the house and she's panicked, 2 seconds later, she's doing flips and dancing around with them. So I like even these housekeeper characters are also really great as they kind of just get caught up in the whimsy and like just know who they're working for and they kind of just know how to act accordingly and
Yeah,
it adds a lot of fun to the movie as well.
immediately,
Yeah.
immediately you get that, I think. But obviously, I mean, Glynis Johns only passed away earlier this year at the age
Yeah.
of 100.
Mhm.
Um, Dick Van Dyke's still
Still
going at
going. He's still
99.
dancing and kicking and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like,
Julie
he's
Andrews is
wonderful.
obviously still
Mhm.
going well. I mean, we should have probably started this episode with "Dearest Gentle Reader," shouldn't we? If anything, I mean,
Yes.
it would
Yeah,
have been a
she's still
little bit
going.
appropriate.
Yeah, it's sad to hear, her talk about how she just can't sing anymore, which is really sad
Yes.
because she was incredibly talented, had such a beautiful range and voice and um yeah, like very sad to hear that she really can't sing like that anymore. I think the last time she really sang on screen was in Princess Diaries 2, where she actually did a little bit of singing, which was really nice.
Okay.
But yeah, oh my gosh, just incredible vocals always from her. And so her songs that she's leading in this film are really great.
I mean, obviously, because she does get the most famous
Yes.
song, right? She
Yes.
gets "Spoonful of Sugar," she gets "Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious,"
Yes.
she gets "Feed the Birds," and it is phenomenal singing. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
phenomenal singing. "Spoonful of Sugar," I think, is a good favourite of mine, I think,
Yeah.
from the movie. It's
I mean,
it's tough to decide what your favourite song from Mary Poppins is.
mine yeah. I mean,
For
mine is
me,
probably
it is.
yes, because there's so many good ones. Mine is kind of one I don't think people would have on their favorites list because it's just so simple, but I love to sing it, I love to harmonize to it, it's just so sweet. I love the "Stay Awake" song, like, that's my favorite.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I just love the kind of fun reverse psychology of the song as well. Um,
Maybe maybe it's more it is the slower, it's a bit more of a lullaby type
But I yes, and
thing.
I love the phrasing of it. I love that I can harmonize to it. It's just such a pretty song, and her vocals are just so smooth and gentle, and yeah, it plays into the storytelling as, she's kind of, like, reverse psychologizing these kids who don't wanna go to sleep, and so she's singing this lullaby saying, "Okay, you don't have to go to sleep, keep your eyes open, and, don't put your head down on that pillow," and that kinda thing,
Yeah.
and as she's, like, lulling them with this lullaby, telling them, "Okay, if you wanna stay up," it's putting them to sleep. So I love kind of that scene, and just how she sings it is really beautiful, and yeah, I would say it's kind of an underrated song, and it's my favorite.
To be fair, I do like, A Jolly Holiday with Mary as
Yes,
well.
yes, it's
I
very
do
sweet. It's
like
a
that.
really sweet duet with her and Bert.
But, I mean, anytime Bert is singing, you do obviously get the accent from Dick Van Dyke. So it's not off-putting, as we've said, not off-putting at all, but do Bert songs, even as frequently as you get a little bit of a hum of Chim Chimery, does it go away from the quality of song compared to Julie Andrews' songs in the movie because you're getting a certain type of singing that has this heavy put on voice about it and isn't clearly Dick Van Dyke's natural way of singing?
Um, I mean, I think because of how it's scored, I think you're able to get into the kind of thoughtful moment of when he's singing those bits. Um, so it doesn't really pull me out of it. No, I think it still works as a song. It's still enjoyable to listen to because when he's singing it as kind of this narration bit,
Yeah.
it is very subdued, and the score that accompanies it is very haunting, and it's more serious in the context of when he's singing it at the beginning. And so, even with this kind of silly put on accent, I think the mood of the song in general helps subdue it so you're not too distracted by it. Like, I really love his Spoonful of Sugar, reprise that he's singing
Mm,
to Mr. Banks at the end, him
yeah.
also kind of a reverse psychologizing Mr. Banks in this moment. Just kind of the simpleness of it, and the context of the scene, I think it also works, and the kind of elevated accent doesn't really take away either. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the best accent, but I think because he's so charismatic, because he's, delivering things well in the context of what the song is in the moment, I think it all still works really well.
Yeah, it does, and, you're right in saying that Chim Chimery does come back time and time again in these kind of thoughtful moments in the
Yeah.
movie where you're pondering a certain change of what's
Mhm.
going on, whether it's at
Mm.
the beginning and something's about to change, the wind has changed, something's about to happen. Bert says all that at the
Mhm.
beginning of the movie. And then I think it comes back after when it's all raining, after they've been into the drawing on the pavement, you've
Mhm.
had your big, bright, poppy cartoon, animation, dancing. They're
Yeah.
wearing the pinstripe suits and straw bolter hats
Yeah.
and kicking about singing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which
Yeah.
obviously I'm going to try and say as much as possible on today's episode because it's just a really good vocal exercise to
Yeah,
try and say.
it is.
To start the day, I think everybody should sing that song. I'm not going to try and say it again as quickly as that um, because it just elasticates the mouth a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit,
And
yeah, gets you worked
it's
up.
obviously a great song. It's a silly song. It's supposed to be a silly song. It's pure fun. The penguins are dancing all around while everybody else is dancing all around, and
Yes, we
it's
get
just
our kind of
loud and
our little band, our little animated band, and kind of telling these little
yeah.
jokes in between the song lyrics, and yeah.
But it's great and it's simple and it's a testament to how much we're talking about every single song in this movie being great to the quality of the Sherman Brothers,
Yeah. Yes.
who Disney legends,
Oh, yeah.
obviously,
Mhm.
undeniably so, arguably, two of the most important people in the long history of Disney,
Yeah.
that isn't a Disney themselves or an animator. As far as musical composers go, you're
Yes.
struggling to get more
Iconic and legendary
iconic
than
yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I did mention on last week's episode of, Walt Disney's favorite song, from stories that I've heard was that "Feed the Birds" was his favorite song, and he would just kind of ask, uh, the Sherman Brothers to come in and just play that song for him at random when he just felt like listening to it.
I mean,
So
I think it's quite mad that "Feed the Birds" is Walt Disney's favorite song, because obviously, okay, in the movie, as we move
mhm,
through the movie, you get your first big outing. Drawing on the Pavement, big songs, Jolly Holiday, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Let's impart fun into the children's lives and
yeah,
then take them back home and never explain why. Never
yeah,
explain that it's there. Nothing's there. Have your medicine. There you go. It's no, no. It's nice medicine. It's
yeah, oh,
strawberry
tastes like
flavored medicine.
strawberry, yeah.
They're also obviously the two children, the most horrifically English children you've ever met in your entire life. Um,
Yeah.
Although I did see, and I didn't know this, that the guy who played Michael died when he was 21.
Oh, yes, I think I remember something like that. Um, sad. Oh,
I don't know why I didn't know that, but that is kind of sad, given that it's that there's people from this movie still alive, and
yeah.
it's not too often, to be honest, on It's a Wonderful Podcast that we do talk about people who are still alive in
Yeah,
these movies.
yeah,
Um, so it's nice to every once in a while, and you would naturally, I think, assume that both the children are, but you know, um, Michael isn't. Michael died when he
oh,
was 21,
so
which is
young.
it's a great shame, because
Yeah.
as far as the kids go, I think they're kind of great in this movie.
Yes!
We were speaking about the kid from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes last week, and how
Not being that great, no.
I don't think he was any good at all. But these
No,
two in Mary
they're so
Poppins are
good.
great. They're
Yes.
perfect for this movie. I suppose this is Disney, though, isn't it? Casting the
Yeah,
right children for their roles. They kind of
yeah,
always
they do a
do
good job.
tend to do that.
Yeah,
They don't really falter that much when it comes to child casting
yeah,
throughout the years, and it works really well with these two. They play off everybody else really, really well in the movie. Um, let's mention a few of the side characters as well. You've already mentioned the sea captain, the admiral,
yeah.
who runs his house on ship time and has a ship on top of his
Yeah, he
house.
has, like, a cannon, and, like, just realized that he's shooting at the chimney sweeps because they're, like, poor, like, he's like,
Oh,
"We need to
100%. Yeah,
shoot
he
these
doesn't want.
beggars." Like,
Yeah,
it's
he
terrible.
is the men who live on what is it? Cherry Street? Cherry. Oh, why don't I
Cherry
know
Tree
the name?
Lane, right?
Cherry Tree Lane. Um, Forgive me, you can tell that, Mary Poppins wasn't necessarily the movie I always watched, and it should have been. The people who live on Cherry Tree Lane are ridiculously, upper class
Well,
kind of
yeah,
people, or certainly upper middle class people,
yeah.
and like their stature in life. Mr. Banks loves his stature
Yes,
in
working at the
life.
bank, and his
The
father worked at the bank, and his father's father worked at the bank, and all this kind
Yes,
of thing, yeah.
all the people at the bank love their stature in life, live for the bank. Mr.
Yes,
Dawes and Mr. Dawes Senior, as played by
by,
Dick Van
Dick
Dyke, as
Van
he looks
Dyke.
like now.
Yes, who actually reprised the role, I think, of the son but looking like the father in Mary Poppins Returns, maybe?
Oh,
I
did
think.
he? See, I didn't see
Yes.
Mary Poppins Returns. Did he actually play that same role?
Yes, so I don't know, I can't the timeline is when Jane and Michael are grown up, so I'm assuming that
Right.
he must be the son, but he's how he looks now, and they just put a beard on him, I think, and he looks just like how he looked here.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's you maybe perhaps people at the time, because you even get a fun credit at the end of the movie of, that character, being credited as, Dick Van Dyke in an anagram name.
Yes, in the name his letters his name all mixed up, and then they kinda move
Yeah.
him around, yeah.
You might think, when watching the movie, you might, like, be tempted to say, "Ah, I mean, that does it looks a bit like Dick Van
Yeah,
Dyke," but for those who might not have noticed, it's quite a fun thing. I
and
think
I
it's
think
easier to notice now because that's what Dick Van Dyke looks like now, and when you
now
see
yes!
pictures of him
He
now,
loo
he just
he
looks
looks just
like
like that,
this.
which is funny, so he did such a good job playing an old man, but he's literally and then, like, we see him kind of flying, floating, and dancing around, so it's
Yeah.
very much like how he is now because he still loves to dance and kick his legs and do kinds of crazy stuff, but also, if I think about it, I don't know that this was done very often at this time, like, it's done all the time now, you see actors like, um Eddie Murphy playing multiple characters and things like that in movies. Um, so I don't know that seeing an actor play another character in the same movie like that was incredibly common that I can think of.
I mean, yeah, it's
Like
whether you
using
can think of
makeup
it.
and that kind of thing. But obviously we see it all the time now in movies. So to kind of see it here, when you think about it, I don't know that that was done very much.
I think there's certain gimmick movies that put famous people in makeup. I think we talked about,
Oh,
what's it
yeah,
called?
wasn't the
The,
letter of
The List of
the
Adrian
list
Messenger,
messenger
63,
yes, yes, very true.
has a bunch of very, very famous actors in heavy makeup
Yeah.
in, that you wouldn't,
Know that it
know
was
they
them.
were there unless, until you're told it's them,
Yes,
basically, in
very
the movie,
silly
and
movie.
it is a very silly movie, a gimmick, so
Yeah.
in a gimmick sense, in gimmick movies, that can happen, but Mary Poppins is obviously a not a gimmick movie.
No, no.
So it is quite
Kind of a
interesting
unique thing, I think.
to think about, definitely. I do find the bankers quite funny though, in just the fact that how people like that existed. And obviously people like that did exist, but they're so unbelievably stuffy and
Yeah.
uptight and precise with everything
Oh, yeah.
and live for gaining penny after penny after penny. Invest your
Invest
tuppence
your
in the
yeah.
bank, Michael. Don't
Yes.
feed the birds with your tuppence.
It's a
You can,
waste. Yeah.
you can invest it in the bank and it will grow and you will
Grow and
feel
grow.
accomplished with your wealth and
Yeah.
invest finance. And Mr. Banks is looking on when this song's going on, really proud
Yes, and
and
he's
being
bringing his
all,
son to the bank, and he's going to be just like him, and then it's like it plays into the fact that he just doesn't really know his children at all,
no,
and it ends up becoming really sad when Jane and Michael run away, um, and that whole kind of storyline plays out,
yeah,
and so it takes a lot for him to realize that they just want time with him, and I like that, his wife kind of reminds him of that, and even in moments when she does try to tell him that he's not really listening, we see him really not listening and really kind of one track mind, only listening to himself and not really paying attention to really anything that's going on. So then this scene is kind of where things, come to a head, where
it
he
is.
starts kind of
Yeah.
realizing just how unengaged he's been with his children.
Yeah, because the kids are obviously they're excited to go out into the city. It's
And spend the day
unusual.
with him, yeah. And just to
It's
spend the day with him, they're excited just to be with him because he never does anything with them.
Yeah, I mean, they say as much to Mary, an outing with father. This is very unusual. It's where we
Yeah.
get the feed the birds song because she brings up the snow globe of St.
Yeah, she
Paul's
sings
Cathedral
it to
and all the
them.
birds
Yeah,
going
she sings it to
around, and
them
she
in bed
sings
at
that.
bedtime just the day before they go, I believe. So then that's on their minds when they do actually go, and that's what he
conjures
wants to do. Mhm.
conjures up the image of
Yeah,
the
the old
bird
woman.
lady.
Mhm.
Um, it's a nice song, obviously. I think
Yeah.
you particularly like the song because of the use of the word tuppence,
"Tuppence, tuppence, tuppence a bag." Yeah.
which is unusual for you. Now, I'd
Yes.
like to point out that nobody says tuppence anymore. It's not really relevant to say, even though
Yeah.
you can still obviously tuppence does still exist. It
Exist.
is
Okay.
still a coin
Okay.
that you can use, although what 2 pence is worth these days. I mean, for goodness sake, it might as well not be a coin, you know. We might as well not have coins.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but it is still something you can have if you want to have a commemorative tuppence, if you want that.
Yeah.
We could also look at getting you an actual old money version of a tuppence.
Oh, okay. Like you
Which
would see in this movie?
Yes, which might be maybe not quite that old, but which might be, more appropriate for you to put on your little Mary Poppins commemorative
Yes.
shelf that you
Yeah.
might have. Um,
As
other
we all
side
do.
characters, though, other side characters, apart from the hilarious Admiral as played by, Reginald Owen, Scrooge from 1938's A Christmas Carol,
Oh.
Reginald Owen. You get Uncle Albert, Ed
Oh,
Wynn,
yeah. Mhm.
for one scene,
Yes.
and randomly, who just comes in, is sat on the ceiling or floating in the air because he
'Cause he
can't
can't
get
stop
down because he's been
'cause he can't
laughing too
stop
much.
laughing. Yes, and, just one of many really great effects set pieces, because you have to think of the time and when you see these practical effects of things,
Yeah.
it's
There's
really
a lot of double
impressive.
exposure, a lot of
Yeah,
back
mhm.
projection and that
Yeah,
sort of
but it
stuff, but it
still
works.
plays really well, it still looks really good. um and the quality of the scene of, the chairs and the table and everything kind of just, when Mary brings that up so they could just have tea sitting sitting up in the ceiling. But yeah.
I mean, think about the concept of what that whole scene is essentially talking about, being lifted up through laughter.
Yeah.
It is, it's the physical embodiment
Yeah.
of it, but it's all about your kind of inner mental state. You are lifted
Yes,
up through
you're
laughter.
light. Yeah, you're in a light state of mind. It was also giving me very much fizzy lifting drinks.
It does, right?
Yeah.
It really does, but it's also some of the worst jokes I've ever heard in
Right?
any
Like,
movie
that stuff
that
would not
make
be making me laugh to the degree that I'd be up there. Now,
th-
this step in time through the house, that would keep me floating around.
that that gets you floating around.
Yeah.
You want to be on the rooftops, but you'd float up to the
Yes.
rooftops because of that.
Yes, yes.
Um, but the again, it's the pure joy that you get from Edwin in his little performance as Uncle Albert
Yeah,
in the
with his
movie.
lisp and his
His lisp, his voice, everything
yes,
about him, his complete unique characterization of himself, the fact he's
yes.
just a nonsense figure.
Yeah. I mean, did
He
he must have voiced some of those animated characters, like Alice in
Oh, yeah,
Wonderland characters. Was
yeah,
he
he
the
was the
Mad
Mad
Hatter?
Hatter. He was the Mad
Yes.
Hatter.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, as well as a few other things for Disney
Yeah.
as well. But I think most notably Uncle Albert and the Mad Hatter, as
Yeah.
far as Disney movies are concerned. But he is just his laugh is infectious. He's an
Yeah.
infectious, joyful person.
Yeah.
His face makes you laugh.
Oh,
His
yeah.
being makes you laugh, and it makes everybody laugh in that scene, Bert ends up on the ceiling, the children end up on
Children,
the
yes,
ceiling.
and Mary's not
Mary's
laughing,
very
but she just knows how to float up there, so she brings the
yes.
table and tea, and so they just have the tea sitting up floating on the ceiling, which is a really fun moment. And
So,
then when the sadness of them saying they have to go is what brings everything down. Yeah,
yeah, which, and they get far too sad about that as well. I mean,
I know.
Dick Van Dyke, we've said how incredibly animated his expressions
Yes,
can
so
be. It's
his, like,
ridiculous how
hi his
upset he is.
yes, his teary face, and then he tries to tell this joke, to kind of get, Uncle Albert all light again, but the joke isn't funny, and then he starts crying because they both start crying because the joke just isn't funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the joke isn't funny. And it brought back one of the jokes, the man with the wooden leg named
Yeah.
Smith, what's the name of his other leg, is
Yeah.
brought back a few times, and it's one of the things that help Mr. Banks realize he needs to embrace a bit of humor in his life. His
Yes, yeah.
children tell him this joke after they visit Uncle Albert, and he's dismissive of it. He doesn't want any of this
Yeah.
nonsense. It's ridiculous. But obviously, when everything that happens at the bank slightly later on does happen, and he's trying to teach the children about the benefits of investing, and look at
Yeah.
all this impressive banking's financial situation. It's
Yes,
very
and
boring, obviously. We don't like
all they wanna
banking.
do is use their money to feed the birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have tuppence. I want to feed the birds. Let's go and feed the birds. Mary Poppins told me to feed the birds. I don't care what Mary Poppins said. I'm quite tired of Mary Poppins. I think I'm going to sack Mary
Yes.
Poppins.
Yes, all of these things have been happening and all these funny, strange things since she came about. And, like, he doesn't really and I like that when he's complaining about her presence bringing about all of these strange occurrences, he never really, describes them as bad things.
No, it's
He
just different things.
Yes, and he like, "What is going on here? We can't have this because it's not orderly like he wants." But I love that he never outright says that the things that she's brought into their world are bad.
No, it's change, and it takes him a
Yeah,
while to embrace that
yeah,
certain uh, level of change. But it is sad, the
yeah,
sequence that follows the bank trip, and it's David Tomlinson again being able to be utterly dry and silly and kind of absurd facial expression comedy, and then move really into really quite effective dramatic acting,
yeah,
as I think he does as well in Bedknobs and Broomsticks
yeah,
um, later on. But when he gets that phone call from, Mr. Dawes at the bank, and you cut back to Mr. Dawes Jr. being told
yeah,
what to say
to
by
say,
Dick
yeah,
Van Dyke as Dawes
while
Sr.
he's eating his biscuits and sipping his milk, yeah.
It's it's I mean, it's funny to look at, but it is a very serious moment, and you are taken into the drama of everything. Everything's quietened down.
Yeah,
Everything is made gloomy. Everything is made kind of upsetting. And okay, Mary's there with the children, still trying to comfort them and be good to them,
yeah,
but she's come under heavy questioning from Mr. Banks around this same
yeah.
time, and frankly refuses to get sacked because she doesn't allow it to possibly happen. She just rebuttals him straight away, and it's just like, no, that's not happening. It's just
Yes, I don't explain
silly.
anything kinda thing.
I don't
Yeah.
explain anything. We're not talking about that.
Yes, but she's also nearing the time where the wind is gonna change and she has to go, near the
Yeah.
end when, Mr. Banks does kind of get this epiphany after, I think it's right after he gets the phone call to come back to the bank at 9 o'clock, um,
Yeah.
because they're
We
gonna
regret
fire
this
him.
course of action,
Yes,
Banks.
because we know your father and your father's father's history with the bank and all this whole kind of thing. And just before he goes, I think is when he has that conversation with Bert, and Bert really kind of, you know doing the reverse psychology, agreeing with,
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, yes, of course you'd want an orderly household," but then kind of giving him this cat in the cradle scenario of, and then your kids are gonna grow up and they'll be gone and you'll have missed that time, but at least you kept your orderly household kind of thing. And so
yeah,
he kind of lays this perspective on him in this really interesting way as he's singing this, kind of reprise to Spoonful of Sugar. And
yeah,
so then he goes, walks, takes this really long, quiet, you know, solitude uh, walk to the bank. And when he gets there and he's faced with these people and they're kind of, saying all the things that they were saying to Michael, something clicks for him. And like, I love that they, they're firing him. They take his hat and like pop a hole through the top and then like put it back on his head. Like, was that necessary?
it is the stupid, dismissal tradition, I think, of this
Yes, it's a
bank where they
very
have to
British, kind of, insult.
yes, mess up his hat, put his umbrella inside out,
And then
and
put it right back on his arm and his head and very calmly
yeah, put a stupid
send him on his
flower
way.
in his lapel,
Yeah.
and that's how you sack somebody at the bank,
Yes.
apparently. It's a bit strange. I think you know what? I was really struck by how that scene looked. It seemed like such a demonic horror movie of a shot when you get that. I think because it's like it's red background and it's just in heavy black darkness.
Yeah, it's like the
Um,
demon council of these bankers and,
it
like,
that's what
this
it looks
ominous,
like.
like, cultish, kind of group that is the bankers. Um,
And you get it from
yeah.
far away. It's not
Mhm.
unlike, that scene of Ned Beatty in Network where he's having that whole spiel from right
Yeah.
across the other side of that long table.
Yeah.
It really did quite strike me as looking like something out of The Omen or something like that
Yeah,
for some
yeah, like
reason.
a chilling cultish, council kind of thing, but he does come to his realization once I think Bert's words sink in, once he realizes, what his son, said to him, what his children want,
Yeah,
and ultimately he gets back, Michael's tuppence, and I think he does end up kind of getting silly and jokey and,
yeah.
ends up
I
telling them that joke, leaving them with the joke once he kind of realizes the humor in the joke about, the leg and all that kind of thing.
yeah. And he is saying things like, "I have only one thing to say to you all now,
Mystic
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious."
expialidocious, yes, and he gets it.
And they don't have a clue what to make of that. They haven't got a clue what to
Yeah,
make of that. They think he's gone absolutely insane, and this is when David Tomlinson starts getting silly and nice and laughing and jokey, and how we like to see him a lot of the time.
yes, comes home and
Um,
dances with his wife and gives her a little
oh yeah, no,
smoochy smooch and
I mean, before even all that, though, he does tell the wooden leg named Smith joke, and it
yeah,
takes Mr. Dawes Senior a little bit of time
before
to
it hits.
understand
Yes.
this joke, and when it does, he gives quite possibly the wheeziest laugh I've ever heard anybody give
Yes,
in my entire life,
and
and
he
he
starts
ends up
floating.
rising to the ceiling, and
Yes,
nobody else knows what to
knows
do
what
with
to
him. His
do,
own
his son
son.
is in a panic, yeah.
It's really quite a sweet, fulfilling little moment that even this
Yeah,
old, decades and decades,
yeah.
90-year-old banker can possibly have some
Yeah.
sort of humor. in his life. It's really quite it's really great to see, the
Yeah.
influence that Mary Poppins can have, the influence that
Yeah, and how that
Joy can have,
spreads. Yeah.
how it spreads. It's really, really wonderful. Obviously, everybody back home, back at the Banks house, is concerned about Mr. Banks at this point. They don't know where he is. He hasn't been seen all night.
Yeah.
The policeman from slightly earlier on in the movie
He
comes
is
back, and
there.
he's a bit of a stupid character as well. But he's called in to try and find Mr.
Yeah.
Banks. Obviously, Mrs. Banks, Glynis Johns, is very concerned about everything
Yes.
that's going on, while she has continued to fight the fight for the suffragette movement
Yeah.
throughout the movie. I don't know if I like or don't like the fact that she just refuses to bring it up around Mr. Banks for the vast majority of the
It
movie.
kind of defeats the film, like, "Oh, we need to put these banners away because he doesn't like them,"
Like,
you know?
that's like, no,
Yeah,
that's
it
not
kind
the
of defeats
point
the
of that,
whole point.
surely.
Yeah. Yeah, very
Um,
performative. Um,
it's why I like, at the very end of the movie, obviously, that it is embraced on the kite. It is the kite
yes.
tail.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, we then, we get back. The wind has changed. Mary has to leave at this point, but her influence has been felt.
Yes, and the kids
Bert's
are
still
very
there
yes,
for
and the
the
kids
fun.
yes, and the kids are very sad when she's leaving, and as she's packing up, and they're like, "You won't go, you won't leave," and then here comes Mr. Banks, he's calling them, they're like, "No, he never calls us like that, that doesn't sound anything like him," and once he's calling them, she tells them to leave, and then they kind of don't notice when she goes because
Yeah,
their father is this new man who's excited to see them. He's fixed their kite and wants to take them out to go fly it and is really engaged with them and laughing with them, and he's this totally new person. So they're completely consumed by that they don't even notice when Mary Poppins leaves, and I think that's exactly how she wants it.
it
So,
absolutely is. You can only assume she's going to go off to the next family
family
that
and
may
yeah,
need
make magic happen, yes.
may need her help. It's exactly the nature of it. We obviously then end the movie with "Let's go
Let's
fly
go
a
fly a
kite,"
kite, yeah.
which again is really, you would be fair to say that's your favorite song from this movie. Um, it takes a while to get to it because it's the very
Right.
end of the movie. It's the last thing that happens in the movie, but it is a great song full of joy, and it's quite simplistic as an idea when you think about it as well. It's not that they have to go and change every bit of every little aspect of their life. It's not that they have to go and move house because it's too depressing there, or
Yeah.
anything like that. It is about the simple fact of spending time together as a family in
Family,
whatever way
yeah,
that means. Flying a kite at the
yeah,
park, so simple.
mhm.
Anybody can do that. Let's go fly a let's go fly a kite. I'm sorry, I got
Yeah.
caught up in my throat then while
Yes,
singing.
yes, so
I'm getting all
emotional.
emotional. Um, let's go fly a kite
Yeah,
in the park, up to the highest height, and David Tomlinson is
or send
belting
it
out this
soaring,
song.
yeah.
Send it soaring. It's really, really wonderful. The votes for women's sash goes on for the tail.
Yes, so there's, like, a little bit of all of them as part of this kite, yeah,
There
yeah,
is, and, Bert's there looking on smiling,
mhm, and he
he's
sees
gonna
Mary
be there.
Poppins go and kinda gives her a nod, like, "Until I
He
see you
does.
again." Yeah,
It's one of his really large winks that he gives or anything or
yeah,
something like that. Um, it is just it was just a delight to watch it again.
yeah,
It
yes,
really was. I couldn't think of any better movie to possibly celebrate this era of musicals, because yes, okay, we've covered quite a lot, or quite a good number of
yeah,
60s musicals actually in the past. Certainly the bigger ones, the more successful ones, the biggest of the big.
Yeah.
And this was really probably the biggest one left from this particular era. So it just made sense to,
Yeah.
really let this exemplify the 60s in musical form. And look how much we've changed in the form
Yeah.
to get to Mary Poppins from Swing Time
Yes.
in
It's a
terms of
huge leap, yeah.
a musical movie. You are dealing in Mary Poppins with just a ridiculous level of grand fun spectacle.
Yes, joy and
And
magical elements and these huge set pieces. I don't think we even really touched on Step in Time and the big kind of,
not
uh,
not too much, no, I mean, you
dance
did mention it a
set
lot,
piece
but
that that is, yeah.
it is probably it's the danciest set piece, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, so it is really, really impressive. All the rooftop shots, all the matte
The silhouetted
painting
shot,
shots
yes, and the
everywhere.
silhouetted dance numbers and the kind of
Yeah,
leaps and jumps and stunts happening there as well. The
it
wire work even with that Mary Poppins kind of twirl that she does.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it really is unbelievable. The chimney smoke steps that you get
Yeah,
on
mhm.
as well on the rooftops.
Yeah,
It's just wonderful to look at, to be in, to be watching, to be a part of the whole experience of this movie. And why they ever thought of making Mary Poppins Returns, I'll never know.
yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't the same. It definitely didn't capture me, grab me like this one did. The songs, like, weren't even very memorable to me. I wanna say I don't know if it was just because I was tired, but I think I fell asleep when I saw it in the theater, and that, like, never happens. Even if I'm tired, I never, like, fall asleep really in a theater.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good at all. You cannot possibly fall asleep watching Mary Poppins, the real movie,
Yeah.
though, I don't think.
No.
Um,
Mm-mm.
and like I said, you can't possibly be cynical about it. It is pure joy on screen. And yes, okay, the movies that have come before have had spectacle about them, sure.
Yeah,
They are just very, very different forms. This is a movie truly for everyone, truly for,
yeah.
anybody of any kind. Yes, it's about very specific people in, upper middle class Edwardian London,
Yeah, but
but
it's also a story about a father and his children and that kind of dynamic and relationship and
yeah,
yeah,
anybody can relate
relate to that.
to to
Yeah,
to an aspect of this movie,
yeah,
even if it's not directly, anybody can relate to finding fun in life, needing to
yeah, not
find
losing that, yeah.
never losing it, and embracing it when it comes along.
Yeah,
That is the nature of Mary Poppins. That is what it is all about, and it's been a fun journey from Swing Time to Yankee Doodle Dandy to Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and now to here.
yeah.
And it's taking a left field turn to end the
Next
series as
yeah,
well.
next week. Yeah,
Um, Next week's going to be a totally different type
yes.
of musical. Um, Not only is it serious in its story, absolutely serious in its
But in
story,
its style, it's
it's
very different.
unique
Yeah,
in its style. It is obviously incredibly choreographed and
yeah,
dancey more than singy, I think,
yeah,
probably. Cabaret is what we've got
yeah.
coming next week. Pure early 70s. Obviously, when we were getting into the 70s, everything was going to change in terms of
Yes.
musicals anyway. But Bob Fosse was a man on his own, really. Okay, Gwen Verdon was there as well, but Gwen Verdon's great. Obviously, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but Bob Fosse's mind is just completely unique,
Yes.
and how he was able to craft and curate the numbers he did on in both theatre and in movies is
Yeah.
just ridiculous. Um, we're getting into all that. It's also, It's a legacy musical, isn't it? Because, you know, it does star the daughter of a pretty famous musical actress herself.
Yes. Yes, and I've never seen Cabaret, so
Well, it's
yeah.
going to be very, very fun because I've never seen Cabaret.
Ah. Oh, wonderful.
This is the good thing about what we like to do on
Yeah.
this show, discovering new old movies, celebrating old movies every single week on It's a Wonderful Podcast. I'm very, very excited to close out the 5 decades of musicals next week with Cabaret. As excited as I was to talk about Mary Poppins today on this month's video episode as
Yeah.
well. It's very, very exciting times. It isn't, of course, the only show we have on this podcast feed. Morgan Hasn't Seen is there every Wednesday, of course. You curate series for me
Yes.
over there. Brave New Women is the name of the game in August. Monday Madness is, of course, there to start the week off right. Subscribe to this podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, of course, on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe, ding your notification bell here on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel if you are, of course, watching today's episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. To check out all the stuff we have here. If you want to support us on Patreon or donate in any way, there are links in the description to go and do that. We would certainly love you forever, much like the Banks children love Mary and Bert and everybody else. And social media, you can find us on the app formerly known as Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Find me there at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E and the because, Jeannine.
3 is a magic number.
On Instagram and TikTok at the Purple Dawn. All your practically perfect stuff as well.
You can find me at Jeannine Devine _ on Twitter, Jeannine Devine on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, you can find this description in the link or search It's a Wonderful Podcast on teespring.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art in print form, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
A choice, Jeannine, a choice. Dick Van Dyke's accent in Mary Poppins, or sing your favourite song from the movie.
Oh my goodness. Do I embrace the silliness of Dick Van Dyke in on theme of the film?
You could do, because you talk like this. Hello there.
Hello.
Oh, what's going on? That's what he talks.
3, 2, 1, step in time, step in time, step in time, step in time.
Bye.